Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to be doing factor by grouping. When you're factoring by grouping, you're typically going to be looking for a polynomial with 4 terms in them. So let's get started. Our first problem is going to be 35 times x to the third minus 42x squared minus 30x plus 36. Alright, so first step in every factoring problem is to check if there is a GCF and if there is a negative in the front. Just by looking at this, I know there is not a negative in the front. The problem looks like it might have a GCF. As you can see, we have a 35 here and a 30 here. Both of those are divisible by 5. But we will notice the 42 and the 36 are not. So we also know that 35 and 42 are divisible by 7. However, 30 and 36 are not. We should keep in mind, however, that these two are divisible by 7. Similarly, 30 and 36 are divisible by 6, but they are not divisible by 7, as we concluded earlier. So we would eventually find that there is no GCF in all 4 of these terms. Okay, so now we can start the factor by grouping process. What we mean when we group is we're going to take 2 terms and factor each one of those. We're going to find a GCF in each of these pair of terms. So we're going to start with 35x cubed minus 42x squared. Well, we know that they're both divisible by 7, so I can factor out a 7. We should also take care to note that there is an x to the third here and an x squared here. Now, just by looking at that, I know I could take an x squared out of both of these terms. So when I factor, I'm going to get 7x squared as my GCF, and I'm going to fill in the parentheses with what would be remaining. In this case, we're going to have 5x minus 6. 35x squared divided by, 35x cubed divided by 7x squared gets me 5x, and negative 42x squared divided by 7x squared will get me negative 6. Okay, now I can find a GCF in my next 2 terms. 30 and 36 we know are both divisible by 6. I see that there's an x variable here but not here, so I'm going to factor out, in this case, negative 6. The reason why I chose a negative is because I have a negative in the front here. When you're taking your second term, if there's a negative in the front, you're going to want to factor out that negative as well. So I have negative 30x divided by 6. It will leave me left over 5x. Now I have 36 divided by negative 6 to get me minus 6. Again, because we factored out the negative in the beginning, we factored out a negative 6, we have to change the sign in the middle. Or you could also see it as 36 divided by our GCF, negative 6. Alright, just by looking at this here, I want you to take notice that we have 2 terms. This term right here, 7x squared times 5x minus 6, and this term right here, negative 6 times 5x minus 6. If we look at those as 2 terms, then we would notice that both of these terms have a GCF of 5x minus 6. So we could indeed factor out from both of these terms 5x minus 6. We should also note that we would fill in, after we're done factoring, we still have to fill in something. We're going to fill in what's remaining after we factor. In this case, we have 7x squared. If you can hear my dog, I apologize. That just means I have some family members coming home and they're freaking out because of it. Anyway, what I would fill into my second set of parentheses, just whatever's left over when I factor. In this case, I have 7x squared minus 6. This should be over here 7x squared. So after factoring these two out, then I'm done. This would be my answer. And indeed, if I were to multiply these two together, we would get our original problem.